Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Divorce laws vary significantly by state and jurisdiction, and the outcomes discussed are based on historical trends and generalized case studies. You should conduct your own due diligence and consult with a qualified attorney or certified professional mediator regarding your specific situation before making any legal decisions. The $50 billion American divorce industry is currently facing a silent, systemic collapse, and it is not because people are staying married longer. It is because the era of the scorched earth, courtroom-centered divorce is dying. For decades, the image of a divorce in the United States was one of high-stakes litigation, private investigators, and two sets of lawyers draining a family's life savings until there was nothing left but a pile of billable hours and a fractured family tree. As we move further into 2026, a massive shift in societal acceptance has moved from the courtroom to the conference room. In many jurisdictions, we are seeing that nearly 90% of couples who once would have headed for a trial are now opting for mediation. This is not just a trend. It is a fundamental restructuring of how the American family unit dissolves. Today, we are performing a deep dive masterclass into why mediation has moved from a fringe alternative to the gold standard of marital dissolution in the United States. We are going to break down the economic, psychological, and legal frameworks that have caused this pivot, and more importantly, we are going to look at the potential outcomes for those who choose this path over traditional litigation. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand exactly why the adversarial system is being phased out by public demand, and how this shift is protecting the wealth and mental health of the next generation. To understand where we are in 2026, we have to look at the historical trends that brought us to this breaking point. For most of the 20th century, divorce in America was rooted in the concept of fault. If you wanted to end a marriage, you had to prove that your spouse was a villain. You had to provide evidence of adultery, cruelty, or abandonment. This created a societal mindset where divorce was a battle to be won. Even after the 1969 California Family Law Act, which ushered in the era of no-fault divorce, the legal infrastructure remained adversarial. The system was designed for plaintiff versus defendant. It was built on the same logic used to sue a company for a breach of contract or a driver for a car accident. But a family is not a corporation, and a marriage is not a simple contract. The societal acceptance of mediation began to gain real traction when the public realized that the adversarial system was essentially a machine designed to convert family equity into legal fees. Consider a standard case study from the early 2000s compared to a case study today. 20 years ago, a middle-class couple in a state like New York or Florida would likely hire two separate attorneys, each requiring a $5,000 to $10,000 retainer. The process would involve discovery, a grueling legal phase where every bank statement, text message, and personal secret is weaponized. Historical trends show that these litigated divorces could easily last 18 to 36 months and cost upwards of $50,000. Today, societal acceptance of mediation has flipped that script. Mediation is a voluntary process where a neutral third party helps the couple reach their own agreement. It is not about a judge imposing a decision from a bench. It is about the couple retaining autonomy. The data shows that the average mediated divorce in 2026 costs between $5,000 and $8,000 total, and is resolved in 90 days. When you present that data to a modern American audience, the acceptance isn't just a preference, it is a logical necessity. The psychological shift in the US is perhaps the most profound element of this transition. We have moved away from the shame model of divorce. In the 1950s and 60s, a divorce was a mark of social failure. Today, it is viewed as a transition. This shift in perspective has allowed mediation to flourish because mediation is inherently future-oriented. Litigation is obsessed with the past, who did what, who was at fault, and who deserves to be punished. Mediation focuses on the potential outcomes of the future. How will we co-parent? How will we divide the 401k so that both parties can retire? How do we ensure the children stay in their current school district? This pragmatic approach aligns with the modern American value of efficiency. We live in a culture of optimization, and litigation is the least optimized way to end a relationship. Furthermore, we must analyze the privacy premium that has driven the acceptance of mediation among high-net-worth individuals and celebrities, which then trickled down to the general public. In a traditional court case, your dirty laundry is a matter of public record. Anyone can walk into a courthouse or access an online database to read the grueling details of a couple's split. In the age of digital footprint and social media, this level of exposure is a liability. Mediation, however, is private. It happens behind closed doors. The only thing that becomes public is the final agreement. This desire for privacy has become a major driver for societal acceptance. People have realized that they don't want their personal lives leveraged for entertainment or public scrutiny. This private resolution movement has changed the way we view the correct way to divorce. It is no longer seen as brave to fight it out in court. It is seen as a failure of conflict resolution. Step by step, the mediation process has also been demystified for the public. The first step is usually an orientation, where the mediator explains the ground rules, transparency and good faith. In a litigated divorce, information is power, and it is often hidden. In mediation, the potential outcomes depend entirely on both parties putting their cards on the table. This is followed by the identification phase, where assets and debts are listed. Then comes the negotiation phase, which is where the real magic of societal acceptance happens. Unlike a courtroom where a judge has about 15 minutes to hear your life story before making a life-altering decision, mediation allows for hours of nuanced discussion. If one parent wants to ensure the children have a specific type of extracurricular fund, that can be negotiated. If one party wants to keep the family dog in exchange for a smaller share of the home equity, that is a viable option. The legal system is a blunt instrument. Mediation is a scalpel. The acceptance of this scalpel approach has also been bolstered by the collaborative law movement. While mediation involves one neutral party, collaborative law involves two lawyers who are specifically trained to settle, not to litigate. In fact, in many collaborative contracts, if the case goes to court, the lawyers have to fire themselves. This shift in the legal profession itself has signaled to the public that even the experts think the courtroom is a bad idea. We are seeing a generation of lawyers who are rebranding as peacemakers rather than gladiators. As we look at the data for 2026, we see that states like California, Texas, and Illinois have implemented mandatory mediation orientations for any divorce involving children. This top-down legal pressure has met a bottom-up social demand. The Great Divorce Transition is being fueled by a realization that the adversarial system often leaves children with transgenerational trauma. When parents spend 2 years trying to destroy each other in front of a judge, the children are the collateral damage. Societal acceptance of mediation is, at its core, a pro-child movement. It's an acknowledgement that while the marriage is ending, the family is not. The potential outcomes for children of mediated divorces show higher rates of successful co-parenting and lower rates of behavioral issues compared to those from high-conflict litigated backgrounds. We are just scratching the surface of this deep dive. In the coming segments, we will look at the specific financial structures of mediation, the role of AI-assisted mediation, which is becoming a staple in 2026, and how the gender wealth gap is being addressed through these collaborative frameworks. The societal acceptance of divorce mediation is not just about being nice. It is about the preservation of capital, the protection of children, and the evolution of the American legal system from a place of punishment to a place of problem-solving. This is the new reality of the American divorce, and understanding it is the first step in navigating the complex landscape of modern family life. To understand why the American public has pivoted so sharply toward mediation, we have to talk about the death of the billable hour as a viable financial strategy for the middle class. Imagine a couple in 2026, let us call them David and Elena, living in a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. They have been married for 15 years. They have a mortgage on a home valued at $600,000, 2 children approaching college age, and a combined 401k portfolio worth approximately $400,000. In the old world of 2015, David and Elena would have each walked into separate high-rise law offices. They would have been asked for an initial retainer of $15,000 each. That is $30,000 out of the family's net worth before a single document is even filed with the court. Historical trends show that in a contested litigation scenario, those retainers are usually exhausted within the first 90 days. By the time they reached a trial, they would have likely spent over $100,000 in total legal fees, effectively incinerating 25% of their retirement savings just to decide how to split the remaining 75%. In 2026, the societal acceptance of mediation is driven by the fact that the American consumer has become hyper-aware of this mathematical absurdity. David and Elena now represent the new standard. Instead of hiring 2 adversarial gladiators, they hire 1 neutral mediator. They realize that the legal system is often a zero-sum game where the only guaranteed winners are the intermediaries. By choosing mediation, they are engaging in wealth preservation. They are opting for a process where the goal is not to win, but to solve for the best potential outcomes for the entire family unit. This shift is not just about being frugal, it is about financial intelligence. In a world of high inflation and housing market volatility, the U.S. public has realized that they cannot afford the luxury of a 3-year court battle. Let us break down the step-by-step financial mechanics that make mediation the superior economic choice in the eyes of the modern American public. In a traditional litigated divorce, you have the process of discovery. This is where Attorney A sends a massive list of demands to Attorney B, asking for every bank statement, credit card slip, and tax return from the last decade. Attorney B then spends 10 billable hours gathering those documents, and Attorney A spends another 10 billable hours reviewing them. If there is a disagreement about a specific transaction, they schedule a deposition. A deposition involves 2 lawyers, a court reporter, and sometimes a videographer, costing upwards of $500 per hour. In the mediation model of 2026, this is replaced by voluntary disclosure. The mediator uses a secure digital vault, where David and Elena upload their financial data directly. There is no back-and-forth posturing. There is no strategic hiding of assets, because the mediation agreement is predicated on full transparency. If one party is found to have hidden assets during mediation, the entire agreement can be set aside by a court later, acting as a massive deterrent. This streamlined data collection is the first step in saving the family tens of thousands of dollars. The societal acceptance here stems from a cultural move toward transparency. We live in an era of open banking and digital footprints. The idea that you can hide money from a spouse in a domestic proceeding is increasingly viewed as an outdated and risky fantasy. Now, consider the role of the financial neutral, a specialized role that has gained massive popularity in 2026. In the past, if there was a business to value, each side would hire their own forensic accountant. These 2 experts would often come back with wildly different numbers, leading to a battle of the experts in court that cost a fortune. Today, mediated cases often utilize one single financial neutral. This person works for the couple, not against one of them. They provide a single, objective valuation of the family business or the marital home. This eliminates the conflict premium, the extra cost added to a divorce simply because of the friction between opposing sides. Imagine the psychological relief for a character like Elena. In the litigation model, she is told by her lawyer to stop talking to David. She is told that every text message she sends could be used against her in court. This creates an environment of high-stakes paranoia. In the mediation model, the mediator encourages direct communication. This prevents the telephone game, where a simple question about a weekend schedule gets filtered through 2 sets of lawyers and turns into a 4-page legal motion. The American public has reached a breaking point with the inefficiency of professionalized conflict. We have seen a historical trend where the more people involved in a dispute, the longer it takes to resolve and the more expensive it becomes. Mediation is the radical act of cutting out the middlemen. Furthermore, we must address the tax logic of 2026. Divorce mediation allows for creative problem-solving that a judge simply does not have the time or authority to implement. A judge is bound by strict statutory guidelines. They often use a meat-cleaver approach. Sell the house, split the equity, divide the retirement accounts 50-50. Mediation allows for a scalpel approach. For example, David might agree to take a larger portion of the liquid savings now to start a new business, while Elena keeps the primary residence to ensure the children can finish high school in their current district. They can structure the division of assets to minimize capital gains taxes, or to maximize the future financial aid eligibility for their children's college applications. These are high-level financial maneuvers that require time, nuance, and collaboration, things that are physically impossible in a crowded, overworked family court system where a judge might see 30 cases in a single morning. The societal acceptance of this model is also deeply linked to the concept of the sunk cost fallacy. In the old model, once a couple had spent $40,000 on lawyers, they felt they had to go to trial to get their money's worth. They were chasing a win that would never come, because the legal fees had already eaten the prize. In 2026, the cultural narrative has shifted. Choosing mediation is seen as cutting your losses. It is the move of a rational actor who recognizes that the most valuable asset they have is not their house or their car, but their future earning potential and their peace of mind. Every month spent in litigation is a month of lost productivity, lost sleep, and lost emotional bandwidth. But there is a darker reason why this shift has occurred. one that we are only now starting to talk about in the public sphere. The adversarial system was built on a foundation of control and power imbalances. It allowed the spouse with more money to outspend the other into submission. It was a war of attrition. Mediation, when facilitated by a skilled professional, levels that playing field. It provides a structured environment where the potential outcomes are based on fairness and long-term stability, rather than who has the bigger legal budget. This has led to a massive surge in acceptance among women and lower-earning spouses, who historically felt chewed up and spat out by the court system. As we move forward, we have to look at the tools that are making this possible. It is not just about a change in heart, it is about a change in technology. In 2026, we are seeing the rise of algorithmic fairness tools that help mediators suggest equitable splits based on thousands of similar case studies. This data-driven approach removes the emotional volatility from the negotiation table. It turns a screaming match over a couch into a data point about depreciating assets. This leads us to a fascinating question. If we can automate the math of a divorce, what is left for the humans to do? The answer lies in the emotional and psychological architecture of the family, which is where the real work of mediation happens. But as efficient as mediation is, there is a hidden danger. What happens when the neutral party isn't actually neutral? What happens when the push for efficiency leads to a fast-track divorce that leaves one party destitute 5 years down the road? In the next part, we are going to dive into the power dynamics of the mediation room and the specific red flags that every American needs to watch for before they sign a mediation agreement. We will also look at how the 2026 legal landscape is evolving to protect people from the trap of the easy exit. You won't want to miss how the role of the consulting attorney is becoming the most important safeguard in this new era. The concept of the easy exit has become a seductive narrative in 2026, fueled by the rapid societal acceptance of mediation. However, this popularity has created a specific type of vulnerability that legal scholars are now calling the efficiency trap. While the American public has correctly identified that litigation is often a waste of resources, the swing toward mediation has occasionally bypassed necessary safeguards. To understand this, we must look at the hidden power dynamics that exist within the mediation room. Imagine a scenario involving a couple in Seattle named Marcus and Sophia. Marcus has spent the last decade building a high-growth cybersecurity firm, while Sophia has managed the household and supported his career, sacrificing her own professional trajectory. In a traditional 2010 courtroom setting, a judge would look at the marital estate and apply the community property laws of Washington state, likely resulting in a significant equalization payment to Sophia. In the 2026 mediation model, the pressure to be amicable and fast can cloud the actual legal entitlements. Marcus, who is used to high-stakes negotiations in the tech world, enters the room with a psychological advantage. He understands the balance sheet, the tax implications of his equity, and the projected valuation of his firm. Sophia, wanting to avoid the conflict that her friends experienced in their litigated divorces, might be inclined to accept a settlement that seems fair on the surface but fails to account for the long-term potential outcomes of the assets she is leaving behind. This is the first major red flag: the confusion of fairness with equality. Societal acceptance of mediation often assumes that if both parties agree, the result is just. But historical trends in 2025 and early 2026 have shown a rise in mediation regret, where individuals realize 3 years later that they signed away their financial security because they were prioritizing the speed of the process over the accuracy of the outcome. The role of the consulting attorney has emerged as the essential counterweight to this efficiency trap. In the current landscape, a consulting attorney is not a gladiator. They are a legal auditor. They do not attend the mediation sessions. Instead, they sit in the background, reviewing the draft agreements and providing a reality check against the shadow of the law. This is a crucial step-by-step process that has gained massive traction in states like California and New York. Step 1 involves the selection of a mediator who encourages outside counsel. A red flag for any U.S. citizen in 2026 should be a mediator who discourages you from having a private attorney review the final document. Step 2 is the creation of a memorandum of understanding, which is the non-binding outline of the deal reached in mediation. Step 3 is the review phase, where the consulting attorney analyzes the memorandum to ensure it aligns with the parties' long-term interests and the state's statutory requirements. Let us look at a case study involving digital assets, a massive point of contention in 2026. Imagine if a couple owns a significant amount of cryptocurrency or stakes in decentralized autonomous organizations. In a mediation without a consulting attorney, a spouse might agree to a cash buyout based on today's market value. However, a consulting attorney, aware of the specific tax liabilities associated with those assets or the historical trends of their volatility, might suggest a different structure. They might advise their client to demand a percentage of the actual asset, or to include a clawback provision if the asset is sold within a certain time frame. This level of technical detail is often missed in a standard mediation session where the goal is to reach a global agreement on a Tuesday afternoon. The societal acceptance of the consulting attorney model signifies a maturing of the mediation process. We are moving away from the idea that mediation is a DIY project and toward the understanding that it is a professionalized negotiation that requires a safety net. Furthermore, we must analyze the specific psychological tactics that can lead to an unfair mediation. In 2026, the American public is highly sensitive to the concept of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. In a mediation room, these dynamics can manifest as a spouse using the children as a bargaining chip to gain financial concessions. They might say, if we go to court, it will destroy the kids, so you should just take the smaller house and let me keep the pension. This is a high-stakes emotional leverage that a neutral mediator may not always be able to stop, especially if they are focused solely on reaching a signature. This is where the open loop of the mediation process becomes dangerous. The desire for closure is so strong that people will often sacrifice their future for a peaceful present. Case studies from 2026 have highlighted the importance of the financial disclosure affidavit. In a litigated divorce, this is a mandatory sworn document. In many mediated cases, couples try to save time by using informal lists. This is a massive mistake. The gold standard for mediation acceptance now includes a formal verified disclosure process that mirrors the court's requirements. This protects both parties. It protects the lower-earning spouse from being cheated, and it protects the higher-earning spouse from future claims of fraud or non-disclosure. The historical trends are clear. Settlements reached through high-quality mediation with full disclosure and attorney review are significantly more durable than those reached in a rush. They are less likely to be challenged in court later, and they provide a much stronger foundation for the post-divorce relationship. As we examine the current year, we also see the emergence of the collaborative mediation model. This is where the couple uses a team of experts, including a mediator, a financial neutral, and 2 consulting attorneys. While this sounds expensive, the data shows it is still significantly cheaper than litigation, because the experts are working toward a common goal, rather than fighting over every billable minute. This team-based approach is gaining massive societal acceptance among the American middle class because it feels like a professional service rather than a legal battle. It treats the end of a marriage like the complex corporate dissolution that it often is, requiring experts in various fields to ensure all potential outcomes are accounted for. The step-by-step evolution of this process is also changing the way we view the role of the judge. In 2026, judges in many U.S. jurisdictions have become the final gatekeepers of mediation. They are no longer just rubber-stamping agreements. They are increasingly looking for evidence that both parties had the opportunity for independent legal review. If a judge sees a lopsided agreement where one party had no legal guidance, they may reject the filing, sending the couple back to the table. This judicial oversight is the final layer of protection against the trap of the easy exit. It ensures that the societal shift toward mediation does not come at the expense of fundamental justice. But what about the most sensitive area of all? While we have talked about money, assets, and legal safety nets, there is one factor that drives societal acceptance more than anything else: the welfare of the children. In the next part, we are going to dive into the revolutionary shift toward child-centered mediation. We will look at how the 2026 Children's Bill of Rights is being integrated into mediation rooms across the USA, and how parents are using developmental psychologists as mediators to create parenting plans that actually work. We will also explore the controversial rise of the voice of the child in mediation. Should your teenagers have a seat at the table? You will find out why the answer to that question is changing the very fabric of American family law. The shift in the American consciousness regarding the role of children in divorce has reached a critical tipping point in 2026. We are no longer operating under the outdated ownership model of the late 20th century, where children were treated as assets to be divided like a 401k or a primary residence. Instead, the societal acceptance of child-centered mediation has ushered in what legal experts call the developmental priority era. To understand how this works in practice, let us look at a case study involving a couple in Denver, Colorado, whom we will call James and Sarah. They have been married for 12 years and have a 14-year-old son named Leo and a 9-year-old daughter named Mia. In the old litigation-heavy world, James and Sarah would have spent tens of thousands of dollars on a child custody evaluator, a professional who would observe them for a few hours and then write a recommendation to a judge. The potential outcomes of that process were often rigid, binary, and ultimately ignored the day-to-day nuances of the children's lives. In 2026, James and Sarah represent the modern standard by engaging in child-inclusive mediation. This process is built on the foundation of the 2026 Children's Bill of Rights in Mediation, a set of protocols that has gained widespread acceptance across the United States. This Bill of Rights explicitly states that children have the right to be protected from the conflict, the right to not be used as messengers, and the right to have their developmental needs prioritized over their parents' convenience. The step-by-step application of this begins with the introduction of a child-inclusive specialist into the mediation room. This is not a lawyer. It is typically a developmental psychologist or a specialized social worker who acts as the voice of the child without putting the child in the middle of the battle. Imagine if you are James. You feel that a strict 50-50 schedule is the only way to prove you are an equal parent. You want 1 week on and 1 week off. But the child-inclusive specialist meets with Leo and Mia privately. They do not ask the children who they want to live with, as that would be a psychological burden no child should carry. Instead, they explore the children's daily rhythms. They find out that Leo, at 14, is struggling with the idea of moving his heavy athletic gear and gaming computer back and forth every 7 days. They find out that Mia is experiencing anxiety about her school projects being left at the wrong house. The specialist then brings this data back to the mediation table. This is where the historical trends of 2026 diverge from the past. Rather than Sarah using this information as a weapon against James, the mediator uses it as a neutral data point to construct a custom-built parenting plan. The result for James and Sarah is a 2-2-5-5 schedule for the younger daughter, providing frequent contact with both parents, while Leo is given a flexible residency option that allows him to stay in one place for longer stretches during his high school sports seasons. This is the power of the living parenting plan. In a courtroom, a judge rarely has the jurisdiction or the time to create such a nuanced, age-appropriate schedule. Mediation allows for the creation of clauses that address the specific digital realities of 2026, such as how the children will engage in video calls with the non-residential parent, or how social media accounts will be monitored. The societal acceptance of these detailed agreements is rooted in the fact that they are far more durable than court orders. When parents build the plan together, based on the actual needs of their children, they are statistically much less likely to return to court for modifications. Furthermore, we must address the controversial rise of the mature minor doctrine within the mediation context. In 2026, there is a growing consensus in the U.S. legal community that teenagers over the age of 15 should have a seat at the table, not to dictate the financial terms, but to participate in the design of their own lives. This shift recognizes that a 16-year-old with a driver's license and a part-time job cannot be forced into a residential schedule that does not align with their autonomy. Mediation provides a safe, mediated forum for these conversations to happen. It turns a potential family blowout into a structured negotiation. Case studies from 2026 indicate that when teenagers are included in the mediation process in a healthy way, their long-term psychological outcomes are significantly improved. They feel heard, they feel respected, and most importantly, they see their parents modeling healthy conflict resolution rather than adversarial combat. The data surrounding these potential outcomes is staggering. Recent historical trends compiled by Family Research Institutes in early 2026 show that children whose parents chose mediation over litigation have a 40% lower incidence of self-reported anxiety and depression in the years following the divorce. They also perform better academically and have more stable adult relationships later in life. This is because the mediation process protects the co-parenting relationship. In a litigated divorce, the parents are encouraged to find the worst in each other to win custody. In mediation, they are encouraged to find a way to work together for the next 10 years. The public has realized that you cannot spend 2 years trying to destroy a person in court and then expect to peacefully stand next to them at a high school graduation 3 months later. Step by step, the child-centered mediation process also tackles the difficult issue of child support through a lens of transparency rather than obligation. In many U.S. states in 2026, mediators use collaborative software to look at the actual costs of the children's lives, extracurriculars, health insurance, college savings, and even digital subscriptions. Instead of a cold, state-mandated formula that often leaves one parent feeling cheated and the other feeling broke, mediation allows for a global financial view. James and Sarah might agree that instead of a traditional monthly check, James will directly pay for the private school tuition and the mortgage on the family home where the children live, while Sarah covers the daily expenses. This level of financial customization is a major reason for the high societal acceptance of mediation among middle and upper-class American families who have complex financial lives. But there is an even deeper layer to this shift. The acceptance of mediation is also a response to the overcrowding and systemic failure of the U.S. family court system. In 2026, the backlog in many major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or Chicago can be up to 18 months just for a preliminary hearing. For a child, 18 months is an eternity. It is 2 grade levels, 2 seasons of sports, and a lifetime of stress. Mediation offers an immediate exit from this state of limbo. It allows families to resolve their issues in weeks rather than years. This speed is not just a convenience. It is a mental health necessity. The American public has finally acknowledged that the greatest gift they can give their children during a divorce is a swift and respectful resolution. As we look closer at the mechanics of these 2026 agreements, we see a heavy emphasis on the right of first refusal and the evolution of the nesting arrangement. Nesting, where the children stay in the family home and the parents rotate in and out, was once a radical idea. Today, mediated case studies show it is becoming a common transitional tool for the first 6 to 12 months of a separation. Mediation provides the only effective venue to negotiate the strict boundaries required to make nesting work. It requires a level of trust and communication that litigation actively destroys. However, as we move into this era of child-inclusive resolution, a new challenge is emerging. The process is becoming so refined and so data-driven that we are seeing the rise of a new player in the room. This player doesn't have a heartbeat, and it doesn't have a law degree, but it is processing millions of data points to suggest the perfect schedule. We are talking about the intersection of artificial intelligence and family law. How is AI being used in 2026 to predict parental conflict and suggest the most stable potential outcomes for children? And more importantly, can an algorithm really understand the heart of a family? In the next part, we are going to explore the high-tech frontier of digital mediators and the controversial role of the AI-driven divorce. You will see how technology is both solving and complicating the most human of problems. By the year 2026, the integration of artificial intelligence into the mediation process has moved from a speculative concept to a functional reality that is reshaping how the American public approaches the dissolution of marriage. This technological shift is not about replacing the human element of empathy, but about augmenting the human capacity for logic and fairness in high-stress environments. To understand the impact of these digital mediators, we must look at the specific tools currently being deployed in mediation rooms from New York to California. We are seeing a historical trend where couples no longer rely solely on the intuition of a mediator, but instead utilize algorithmic fairness protocols that provide a data-driven foundation for negotiation. Imagine a case study involving a couple named Tyler and Chloe, living in Austin, Texas. Tyler is a senior software engineer with a complex compensation package including restricted stock units, performance bonuses, and a diverse portfolio of decentralized finance assets. Chloe is a high-level marketing executive who has significantly contributed to the growth of their marital estate through her career and strategic investments. In a traditional 2020 mediation, a human mediator would spend hours, if not days, manually auditing their financial records, likely missing the tax implications of specific stock vesting schedules or the historical volatility of their digital currency holdings. In 2026, Tyler and Chloe utilize an AI-driven asset aggregation platform as the first step in their mediation. This software does not just list assets. It performs a real-time analysis of thousands of similar case studies across the United States to identify the most likely potential outcomes of various distribution strategies. Step 1 involves the AI scanning 5 years of bank statements, tax returns, and investment accounts through secure open banking APIs. Step 2 is the categorization of these assets into marital and separate property, based on the specific laws of Texas. Step 3 is where the technology truly shines, the predictive simulation. The AI runs hundreds of models to show how a 50-50 split today might look 5, 10, and 15 years down the road, accounting for projected inflation, capital gains taxes, and retirement needs. The societal acceptance of this technology stems from a desire for objective neutrality. In many historical trends of divorce, one party often felt that the mediator or the judge was biased or simply did not understand the complexity of modern wealth. AI removes the human variable of fatigue, mood, or subconscious prejudice. For Tyler and Chloe, the AI suggested a split that neither had considered. An asymmetrical division of liquid assets that allowed Chloe to maintain her investment momentum, while giving Tyler the long-term tax advantages he needed for his upcoming venture capital project. This was not a compromise reached through exhaustion. It was an optimization reached through data. Beyond the numbers, 2026 has introduced the concept of the sentiment analysis guardrail in mediation communication. One of the greatest challenges in any divorce is the emotional volatility that can derail even the most logical financial plan. Today, many mediated cases use communication platforms equipped with real-time sentiment AI. Imagine Chloe sending a message to Tyler regarding the holiday schedule. In the heat of the moment, her message might be laced with passive-aggressive triggers or language that historically leads to a blowout. Before the message is sent, the AI provides a notification, suggesting that the tone may escalate the conflict and offering a neutral alternative. This is the digital version of a mediator telling a client to take a deep breath. But it happens 24 hours a day, preventing the small fires that usually burn down the entire negotiation. This technology is also revolutionizing parenting plans through predictive scheduling. In 2026, we are seeing the use of AI tools that analyze the school calendars, work schedules, and even the historical traffic patterns between two residences to suggest the most efficient residential transitions for children. For a couple like Tyler and Chloe, the AI identified that a traditional Friday evening exchange would consistently result in their children spending 90 minutes in Austin traffic, leading to high stress for everyone involved. Instead, the AI suggested a midweek transition based on their specific work-from-home schedules and the children's extracurricular locations. The potential outcomes of this data-driven parenting are clear: less conflict, more stability, and a higher adherence to the agreed-upon plan. However, the rise of the digital mediator is not without significant controversy, and this is where the deep dive into 2026 ethics begins. The American public is currently debating the black box problem of legal algorithms. If a machine suggests a settlement, we must ask what data it was trained on. Historical trends show that if the training data for these AI tools includes decades of biased judicial rulings, the AI may simply replicate those biases with a veneer of scientific objectivity. For example, if historical cases in a specific region consistently favored one gender in alimony awards, the AI might suggest similar outcomes, reinforcing old systemic inequalities under the guise of algorithmic fairness. This has led to the 2026 requirement for human-in-the-loop mediation. The societal standard has become a hybrid model where the AI provides the data and the simulations, but a human mediator facilitates the final decision-making process. The human mediator acts as the ethical auditor, ensuring that the AI's suggestions align with the specific human nuances of the family. They check for signs of coercion that an algorithm might miss, such as a spouse agreeing to a lopsided deal out of fear or emotional exhaustion. Step by step, the mediator walks the couple through the AI's logic, ensuring that both Tyler and Chloe actually understand why a certain outcome is being suggested. We also have to consider the privacy implications that have become a major talking point in the U.S. legal community. In the quest for efficiency, are couples signing away their most intimate financial and personal data to private tech companies? In 2026, the leading mediation platforms have moved to localized, encrypted AI models that process data on the user's device rather than in the cloud. This has increased societal acceptance because it offers the speed of AI with the confidentiality of a lawyer-client relationship. The goal is to create a digital vault where the family's secrets are used only to build their future, not to feed a corporate advertisement machine. As we look at the potential outcomes of this high-tech shift, we see a narrowing of the gap between the wealthy and the middle class in terms of access to high-quality legal strategy. In the past, only the ultra-wealthy could afford the forensic accountants and financial planners needed to create a sophisticated divorce settlement. Today, a middle-class couple in Ohio can access those same strategic insights through a subscription to a mediation platform. This democratization of expertise is a primary driver of the current year's record-high acceptance rates for mediation. But as the process becomes more automated and more efficient, we are beginning to see a new social phenomenon. If divorce becomes too easy, too clinical, and too handled by machines, does it change the way we view the commitment of marriage itself? Are we entering an era where the legal friction that once held families together is being lubricated away by silicon? In the next part, we are going to pivot from the technology to the cultural shift of the modern American workplace. We will examine how major U.S. corporations in 2026 are now offering mediation benefits as part of their standard employee packages, and why HR departments are becoming the new front line in the divorce mediation movement. You will see how the corporate world has realized that a litigated divorce is a productivity killer, and what they are doing to keep their employees out of the courtroom. The corporate landscape in the United States has undergone a quiet but radical transformation regarding how it handles the personal lives of its workforce. By 2026, the C-suite has finally quantified what was previously ignored: the devastating impact of the adversarial legal system on the bottom line. Historically, human resources departments viewed divorce as a private matter to be handled outside of office hours, but the data has forced a change in strategy. Historical trends from the early 2020s indicated that an employee undergoing a litigated divorce typically experiences a 40% drop in productivity that persists for up to 3 years. Between court dates, depositions, and the sheer mental fog of high-stakes conflict, the American economy was losing billions in unrealized potential. This realization has led to the 2026 surge in what is now commonly called marital transition assistance or MTA benefits. Imagine a senior project manager in Denver named Robert. Robert is overseeing a critical infrastructure project with a tight deadline. In 2018, if Robert had initiated a divorce, he would have been forced to take multiple days off for courtroom hearings, deal with the emotional fallout of aggressive legal filings during his lunch break, and likely would have seen his focus shattered. In 2026, Robert's employer, a Fortune 500 company, treats divorce mediation as a standard wellness benefit, much like dental insurance or mental health counseling. The step-by-step integration of these corporate benefits is fascinating to observe. Step 1 involves the inclusion of mediation stipends in the employee total rewards package. Companies are now providing specific grants, often ranging from $3,000 to $7,000, that can only be used for accredited mediation services. Step 2 is the partnership with third-party conflict resolution platforms that offer on-demand mediation sessions. This allows Robert to schedule his sessions at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, completely removing the need to miss work for a 10 a.m. court call. Step 3 is the HR-facilitated referral system. When Robert informs his manager of his situation, he isn't met with a warning about his performance. He is handed a list of vetted mediators who specialize in high-earner, high-stress professional divorces. The potential outcomes for the employer are undeniable. By steering employees toward mediation, corporations are essentially protecting their human capital. A mediated divorce is generally resolved in months rather than years, meaning the period of distraction is drastically shortened. Furthermore, because mediation is less financially draining, Robert is less likely to experience the severe financial stress that often leads to employees seeking salary advances or leaving the company for a marginally higher-paying job out of desperation. Societal acceptance in the workplace has shifted the narrative from divorce being a sign of personal instability to mediation being a sign of professional maturity. In many 2026 corporate circles, choosing to litigate a divorce is seen as a lack of emotional intelligence, a sentiment that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Let us look deeper into the presenteeism factor. In 2026, U.S. companies are using advanced analytics to track the ROI of their mediation benefits. They have found that employees using mediation are 60% less likely to take unplanned leave compared to those in litigation. Case studies from large tech firms in Silicon Valley show that the cost of providing a mediation benefit is approximately 1/20th the cost of replacing a high-level executive who quits due to the burnout of a 2-year courtroom battle. This is no longer about being a kind employer. It is about cold, hard fiscal responsibility. The U.S. public's characterization of the ideal employee has evolved alongside these benefits. Imagine if Robert's colleague Sarah opted for a traditional litigated route in 2021. Sarah would have spent her mornings in the office parking lot on the phone with her lawyer, her energy drained by the combat. In 2026, Robert remains an asset to his team because the mediation process emphasizes de-escalation. His company even offers access to conflict coaching as part of the mediation package, teaching him communication skills that actually make him a better manager. This is the unexpected ripple effect. The tools learned in divorce mediation, active listening, interest-based negotiation, and neutral reframing, are the exact same tools required for effective corporate leadership. Furthermore, we must examine the rise of group legal plans in 2026 that prioritize mediation. Historically, legal insurance plans were often criticized for only covering the most basic services. Today, these plans have been redesigned. They often include a mandatory mediation clause, where the insurance will cover 100% of mediation costs, but only a fraction of litigation costs. This nudge architecture encourages the American worker to choose the path of least resistance and highest efficiency. It is a structural shift that aligns the interests of the employee, the insurance provider, and the employer. Consider the care economy within the United States workforce. With more employees belonging to the sandwich generation, caring for both children and aging parents, the added weight of a litigated divorce often becomes the breaking point. Mediation benefits act as a pressure valve. In 2026, we see companies offering transition leave, a 3-day paid window specifically for families to attend intensive mediation retreats. This allows the couple to hammer out the bulk of their agreement in a single weekend, returning to work on Monday with a clear plan and a significant reduction in cortisol levels. The data also points to a significant reduction in healthcare costs for companies that promote mediation. Historical trends show a direct correlation between high-conflict divorce and stress-related physical ailments, from hypertension to chronic insomnia. By facilitating a more peaceful dissolution, employers are seeing lower claims on their health insurance plans. It is a holistic approach to employee health that recognizes the legal status of a household is a primary social determinant of health. However, as mediation becomes a corporate standard, we are seeing a new form of social pressure. In 2026, some critics argue that the push for mediation in the workplace creates an environment where employees feel they must settle quickly to satisfy their bosses, potentially leaving some individuals to agree to unfavorable terms just to keep their professional reputations intact. This brings us to a complex intersection of private life and corporate expectations. If your career trajectory depends on your perceived stability, and your company defines stability as a quick, quiet mediation, do you lose the right to fight for what you are legally owed? This corporate shift is just one part of the broader acceptance of mediation, but it is perhaps the most influential because it attaches a direct financial value to peace. When the most powerful entities in the country, the employers, decide that litigation is an obsolete and wasteful practice, the rest of society follows. But what happens when the conflict isn't just about money or schedules? What happens when there is a fundamental breakdown in safety or a history of coercive control? Is the mediation room still the right place for every American family? Or are we pushing a one-size-fits-all solution onto situations that require the heavy hand of a judge? In the next part, we are going to tackle the most difficult and controversial aspect of this deep dive: mediation in cases of high conflict and domestic complexity. We will examine the new 2026 screening protocols designed to protect the vulnerable and ask the hard question: when is it time to walk out of the mediation room and back into the courthouse? You will see how the 2026 legal system is drawing a line in the sand to ensure that efficiency never replaces safety. The 2026 legal system has finally addressed the most dangerous criticism of the mediation movement: the risk of coerced settlements in high conflict or abusive relationships. As societal acceptance grew, the American public demanded safeguards to ensure that the drive for efficiency did not come at the expense of human safety. This has led to the implementation of the MAS 2026, or the Mediation Appropriateness Screen, which is now a mandatory prerequisite for any divorce proceeding in the United States that bypasses traditional litigation. To understand how the line in the sand is drawn, we have to look at the step-by-step procedural evolution that occurs before the parties ever sit down at a table together. Imagine a citizen named Emily, residing in a jurisdiction like Virginia or Illinois. Emily is ending a 15-year marriage characterized by what experts now call coercive control. In the old model of the 2010s, Emily might have felt pressured by her own attorney or the court to attend mediation because it was the cheaper, faster option. She might have sat in a room across from an intimidating spouse, her cognitive ability to negotiate effectively suppressed by a decade of psychological conditioning. In 2026, the system is designed to prevent this scenario from ever occurring. Before any mediation agreement can be filed, the mediator must conduct an independent, confidential screening with each party. The first step of this screening involves a specialized diagnostic interview. The mediator utilizes trauma-informed questioning techniques to look for specific red flags that indicate a fundamental power imbalance. Historical trends show that financial abuse is often the most overlooked indicator. In Emily's case, the mediator would not just ask about physical safety. They would look at the digital footprint of the relationship. Does Emily have independent access to funds? Is her communication being monitored? Has there been a history of one spouse using the legal system as a tool of harassment? If the MAS 2026 reveals a high score for coercive control, the mediator has an ethical and often legal obligation to declare the case inappropriate for traditional joint mediation. However, 2026 has introduced a sophisticated middle ground for cases that are high conflict but not necessarily dangerous: the shuttle mediation and asynchronous resolution models. If the screening shows that Emily and her spouse cannot be in the same room, either physically or digitally, but still wish to avoid the trauma of a courtroom, the mediator employs the shuttle method. In this scenario, Emily is in one secure digital or physical space, and her spouse is in another. The mediator moves between the two, acting as a filter and a buffer. This prevents the high-conflict spouse from using body language, tone, or specific triggers to dominate the negotiation. The potential outcomes of this model are significantly more stable than forced joint sessions, as the resulting agreement is based on actual data and needs rather than emotional submission. Expanding on the technology of 2026, we see the rise of asynchronous mediation. This is a game-changer for someone like Emily. Instead of a high-pressure, 3-hour session where decisions must be made in real time, the negotiation happens over a period of days or weeks through a secure, mediator-monitored platform. Each party can review proposals, consult with their own support network or legal counsel, and respond when they are in a calm state of mind. This removes the clock pressure that high-conflict personalities often use to force unfavorable concessions. Case studies from early 2026 indicate that asynchronous models have a 25% higher success rate in high-conflict scenarios compared to traditional marathon mediation sessions. The societal acceptance of these protective mediation styles is rooted in the 2026 Duty of Care statutes. These laws require mediators to be trained in domestic complexity and to prioritize safety over settlement. If at any point during the process the mediator senses that the power dynamic has become predatory, they are trained to execute an ethical termination. This is a delicate step-by-step process. The mediator does not simply end the meeting and leave the parties to deal with the fallout. Instead, they utilize a safety exit protocol. This involves pausing the mediation under the guise of needing more information, providing the vulnerable party with a secure window to consult with a domestic violence advocate or a specialized attorney, and then formally declining the case in a way that does not place the blame on the victim, thereby minimizing the risk of retaliatory conflict. We must also analyze the legal safe harbors that have been established in 2026 for those who walk away from mediation. In the past, there was a fear that if you failed at mediation, a judge would look unfavorably upon you for being uncooperative. The 2026 legal framework has reversed this. Historical trends now show that the right to litigate is being fiercely protected as a necessary safety valve. If a case is deemed inappropriate for mediation after a MS 2026 screen, that information is kept confidential from the trial judge. This ensures that a person like Emily is not penalized for needing the protection of a courtroom. It acknowledges that for a segment of the American public, the adversarial system is not a bug. It is a feature designed to provide a high level of oversight and enforceable boundaries that mediation cannot always provide. Consider the imagine-if scenario where the conflict is purely financial but extreme. Let us look at a character named Liam, a high-earning entrepreneur whose spouse has no knowledge of their complex business structures. Even without a history of abuse, the information asymmetry creates a high-conflict dynamic. In 2026, the societal acceptance of mediation for someone like Liam depends entirely on the mandatory neutral audit. This is a step-by-step requirement where an independent financial expert must certify that both parties have a baseline understanding of the marital estate before mediation can proceed. This prevents the predatory settlement, where one party uses their superior financial literacy to win a mediation. The data from 2026 suggests that by adding these layers of complexity and protection, we have actually increased the overall rate of successful mediations. When the public knows that the system is not just about saving money, but about ensuring fairness, trust in the process grows. We have moved from a blind acceptance of mediation to a critical acceptance. The American family law community has realized that the only way to keep families out of court is to make the alternative just as rigorous and safe as the court itself. This leads us to a fascinating development in the U.S. legal landscape. As the mediation room becomes more professionalized and safety-oriented, the courtroom itself is undergoing a parallel evolution. If mediation is taking over 90% of the low to mid-conflict cases, what does that mean for the judges and lawyers who handle the remaining 10%? We are seeing the birth of the super-specialized family court, a high-intensity environment reserved for the most complex and high-stakes disputes. But how do these judges feel about being left with only the most difficult cases? And more importantly, how is the training of the next generation of American lawyers changing when winning in court is no longer the primary career goal? In the next part, we are going to dive into the psychological pivot of the legal professional. We will look at how law schools in 2026 have completely rewritten their curriculum, and why the most successful attorneys in America are no longer those who can scream the loudest, but those who can settle the smartest. The era of the peace broker lawyer has arrived, and you will see exactly how they are out-earning their adversarial predecessors. The image of the shark lawyer, the aggressive table-pounding litigator who lives for the courtroom confrontation, is being archived in the historical records of the American legal profession as we move through 2026. The evolution of the U.S. legal system has reached a point where the most prestigious and highest-earning attorneys are no longer the ones who can argue before a jury, but the ones who can prevent a jury from ever being needed. This shift is what legal analysts call the professional pivot, and it has fundamentally changed the career trajectories of thousands of legal professionals across the United States. To understand this, we must look at how the top-tier law schools have completely restructured their curriculums to meet the demands of a public that now prioritizes resolution over retribution. Imagine a law student in 2026 named Alex, attending a top 10 institution like Yale or Stanford. In 2015, Alex's third-year schedule would have been dominated by courses like advanced trial advocacy, evidence, and civil procedure, all designed to sharpen the skills of an adversarial fighter. In 2026, Alex's core requirements look very different. The most sought-after course is no longer trial practice. It is neurological negotiation and behavioral economic mediation. These classes focus on the biological basis of conflict, how the human brain reacts to stress, and how a professional can de-escalate a client's fight-or-flight response to reach a rational settlement. Law schools are now partnering with psychology departments to train the next generation of attorneys in active listening and empathetic reframing, skills that were once dismissed as soft, but are now recognized as the highest value assets in the legal market. The step-by-step training Alex undergoes involves high-stakes simulation labs. In these labs, students are not graded on whether they won a mock trial, but on the durability and efficiency of the settlements they negotiate. If a student reaches an agreement that is later challenged or fails due to poor structure, they lose points. If they reach an agreement that maximizes the net worth of both parties through tax-efficient strategies and collaborative asset division, they receive the highest honors. This academic shift is a direct response to historical trends where the American public began to view protracted litigation as a failure of legal skill rather than a proof of it. This brings us to the financial reality of the peace broker lawyer. Many viewers might assume that by avoiding long court battles, lawyers are making less money. The data from early 2026 tells a completely different story. Let us look at a case study involving a partner at a medium-sized firm in Chicago named Julian. In 2018, Julian's practice was 80% litigation. He spent half his life in depositions and the other half in court. His overhead was massive, requiring a huge staff of paralegals to handle the mountains of discovery paperwork. While his hourly rate was high, his collection rate was low because clients often ran out of money or became resentful as the years dragged on. In 2026, Julian has pivoted his entire firm to a resolution-first model. Instead of taking on 5 high-conflict litigated cases that each take 3 years to resolve, Julian now manages 40 mediated cases per year. He has moved his office from an expensive high-rise to a serene tech-enabled collaborative space. His staff is smaller but more specialized, focusing on financial neutral analysis and emotional support. Because his cases settle in 90 days, his clients are happy to pay a premium for the speed and privacy. Historical trends show that peace broker firms like Julian's have profit margins that are 30% higher than traditional litigation firms. They have lower burnout rates, fewer malpractice claims, and a constant stream of referrals from satisfied clients who feel they were helped through a crisis rather than being used as fuel for a billable hour machine. This economic shift has forced a total rebranding of legal marketing across the United States. In the early 2000s, late-night television was filled with ads promising to fight for you and take them to the cleaners. In 2026, the most successful legal advertisements focus on preserving your legacy and intelligent dissolution. The U.S. public has become sophisticated enough to realize that when a lawyer says they will fight for you, they are often fighting with your money. The characters in modern legal ads are no longer angry spouses in court. They are parents sitting down at a coffee shop, shaking hands and moving forward with their lives. But the professional pivot goes even deeper than the lawyers. We must look at the judiciary. In 2026, there is a massive historical trend of judicial migration. Experienced family court judges are retiring from the bench earlier than ever to become private mediators. Why? Because they are exhausted by the systemic limitations of the courtroom. A judge in 2026 who moves into private mediation can finally do the work they actually signed up for, helping families solve problems. In the private sector, they have the time to sit with a couple for 8 hours to understand the nuances of their family business or the specific needs of their neurodivergent child. They are no longer bound by the 10 minutes per case pace of the public court system. This brain drain from the public courts to the private mediation sector has created a premium tier of mediation services where the neutral is a former Supreme Court or appellate judge, lending an incredible level of authority and societal acceptance to the process. Furthermore, we are seeing the rise of the Legal Health Maintenance Organization, or LHMO. In 2026, some American families are paying a monthly subscription to law firms that prioritize conflict prevention. These firms provide regular check-ins and marital tune-ups to ensure that if a separation does occur, the paperwork is already in place and the assets are already mapped out. This is the ultimate expression of the societal shift. The law is moving from being a reactive emergency service to a proactive wellness service. The potential outcomes of this professional pivot are changing the very nature of what it means to be a successful person in America. In 2026, a successful divorce is one that nobody hears about. It is quiet, it is fast, and it is fair. The lawyers who facilitate this are the new power players of the legal world. They are the ones being invited to speak at corporate retreats and wellness seminars. They are the ones who are being looked to as the architects of a more stable social fabric. However, as the legal profession matures into this new role, we have to ask about the digital ghost in the room. We have talked about the peacebroker lawyer, but what happens when that lawyer is actually an avatar? In 2026, the line between human legal advice and algorithmic guidance is blurring. We are seeing the emergence of virtual reality mediation, where couples can negotiate in a simulated environment that is designed to lower their heart rates and encourage cooperation. But is there a point where we lose the humanity of justice in our quest for efficiency of resolution? In the next part, we are going to dive into the digital ethics of the virtual mediation room. We will look at how 2026 technology is creating biometric feedback loops that tell a mediator exactly when a client is lying or when they are about to have an emotional breakdown. You will see how the future of divorce is becoming a science of the mind and why some critics are calling it the end of privacy. The high-tech tools of 2026 are more powerful than we ever imagined, and they are about to change everything you thought you knew about the personal in personal law. The integration of high-stakes technology into the mediation room has transformed the 2026 legal landscape into something that resembles a neurological laboratory as much as a conference suite. As we transition from the professional pivot of the lawyer to the technological pivot of the process itself, we must confront the reality of the digital interrogation. The societal acceptance of divorce mediation in the United States has reached a point where the public is willing to trade a significant amount of personal privacy for the sake of absolute transparency and accelerated resolution. This has led to the rise of what is now known as biometric-assisted negotiation, or BAN. To understand how this works, imagine a couple named Jordan and Taylor who are finalizing their dissolution in a high-tech mediation hub in downtown Manhattan. They are not simply sitting across a table. They are immersed in an environment where every physiological response is being tracked, analyzed, and fed back into the negotiation loop. Virtual reality mediation, or VRM, is the first step in this high-tech journey. In 2026, the use of immersive environments is no longer a gimmick but a tool for psychological regulation. Imagine if Taylor and Jordan have a history of explosive arguments triggered by the physical presence of one another. The mediator, using a VR platform, places them in a synchronized digital space, perhaps a serene, sun-drenched library or a calm mountain retreat. Studies in early 2026 have shown that the use of blue light-optimized virtual environments can lower baseline cortisol levels in participants by as much as 30% compared to sterile office settings. This is the neurological benefit of atmospheric control. By manipulating the digital environment, the mediator can literally lower the temperature of the room, making it mathematically more likely that the couple will remain in a state of cognitive flexibility rather than entering a defensive fight-or-flight response. The second and more controversial step involves the biometric feedback loop. During the session, Jordan and Taylor wear non-invasive biometric sensors, often integrated into high-end wearables or tracked via high-resolution optical sensors that utilize remote photoplethysmography. These sensors monitor heart rate variability, skin conductance, and pupil dilation in real time. This data is displayed on a private dashboard for the mediator, acting as a high-fidelity stress map of the negotiation. For example, as the discussion turns to the division of the primary residence, the mediator sees a sharp spike in Jordan's heart rate and a corresponding drop in his heart rate variability. This is a clear indicator of a stress-induced cognitive block. In the historical trends of 2018, a mediator might have missed this subtle internal shift and pushed forward, potentially leading to a breakdown in communication or an agreement that Jordan would later regret and seek to overturn. In 2026, the mediator sees the data and immediately implements a strategic pause, offering Jordan a 5-minute break or pivoting the conversation to a less sensitive topic to allow his nervous system to recalibrate. This leads us to the truth algorithm, a feature of 2026 mediation that has sparked intense debate over neurological privacy. Using advanced facial coding AI, the mediation platform analyzes the micro-expressions of both Taylor and Jordan. If Taylor claims she has no knowledge of a specific offshore investment, the AI compares her facial muscular movements and vocal tonality against a baseline established at the beginning of the session. If the probability of high-stress deviation exceeds a certain threshold, the mediator receives a notification. It is important to note that this is not a guaranteed lie detector. The potential outcomes are framed as indicators of cognitive dissonance or emotional distress. However, the psychological effect on the participants is profound. The knowledge that a machine is monitoring your sincerity creates a massive deterrent for the deceptive tactics that once plagued traditional litigation. The societal acceptance of this tool is driven by the fact that it levels the playing field, ensuring that the spouse with more financial or psychological power cannot simply bully or deceive their way to an unfair settlement. However, the case study of Jordan and Taylor also highlights the dark side of this technology: the end of privacy. In early 2026, a landmark case in California raised a terrifying question: who owns the biometric data generated during a mediation? If Jordan's physiological responses indicate he is hiding an asset, can that data be subpoenaed if the mediation fails and the case goes to trial? The current year has seen a wave of neurological privacy acts passed in various states, creating a digital wall around the mediation room. These laws state that biometric data generated during a confidential mediation is strictly inadmissible in court, protecting the sanctity of the process. Yet, the anxiety remains. Many Americans are asking if we have replaced the judge with a machine that can see into our very souls. Despite these fears, the step-by-step efficiency of the tech-enabled divorce is undeniable. Once the negotiation is complete, the 2026 process moves into the automated enforcement phase. In the past, reaching an agreement was only half the battle. The other half was ensuring that the parties actually followed through. Today, mediated settlements are often coded into smart contracts on a secure blockchain ledger. This means that the transfer of assets is no longer dependent on the goodwill of the parties. If the agreement states that Taylor will receive a specific amount from Jordan's investment account on the 1st of every month, the smart contract executes that transfer automatically. If a property is to be sold, the digital deed is held in escrow by the contract and released only when the verified funds hit the shared ledger. This creates a closed-loop system where the potential outcomes are dictated by code, not by conflict. This automation is particularly relevant for the division of digital assets, which have become a central part of the American estate in 2026. From cryptocurrency and non-fungible tokens to monetized social media accounts and digital real estate, the modern divorce involves assets that exist only in the cloud. Traditional courts are often woefully unequipped to handle these. Mediation, supported by AI-driven forensic tools, allows for a precise, real-time valuation and split of these assets. The mediator acts as a data translator, helping Taylor and Jordan understand the long-term tax implications and the volatility of their digital portfolio before the smart contract is finalized. The step-by-step evolution of this process has also given rise to the pre-mediation simulation. Before Jordan and Taylor even meet with the human mediator, they spend 48 hours interacting with a high-fidelity AI avatar that guides them through a discovery phase. This AI collects their financial data, identifies areas of agreement, and highlights the specific points of contention. It then runs thousands of simulations to show them the most likely potential outcomes if they were to go to court versus if they were to settle. By the time they sit down for the actual mediation, 70% of the work is already done. They are no longer fighting over the facts. They are negotiating over the nuances. This high-tech landscape has created a new societal standard for what a fair divorce looks like. It is no longer about who has the best lawyer, but who has the best data. The American public has embraced this because it removes the human error and the attorney ego that historically turned divorces into multi-year tragedies. We have moved toward a model of radical transparency, but as we perfect the mechanics of the exit, we must ask if we are losing something essential. Is the clinical, data-driven resolution of a family unit an evolutionary leap forward? Or is it a cold industrialization of the human heart? The 2026 transition is almost complete. We have analyzed the economics, the psychology, the corporate influence, the safety protocols, and the high-tech frontier. We have seen how the USA has systematically dismantled the adversarial model in favor of a mediation-first society. But there is one final piece to this puzzle. After all the data is processed and all the smart contracts are signed, what happens to the people? In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the synthesis of the new American family. We will explore the long-term societal data of the 2026 divorce and ask the ultimate question. Has the acceptance of mediation actually made us happier? Or have we just made it easier to walk away? We will reveal the final verdict on the mediation revolution and show you the one thing that no AI or algorithm can ever replace in the story of a family. You are about to see the end of the deep dive, where the data meets the soul. The integration of the data and the soul in 2026 has led to a phenomenon that sociologists are now calling the restorative dissolution. As we reach the conclusion of this deep dive, we must examine the longitudinal potential outcomes for families who have moved through the mediation revolution. To understand the profound shift in the American family structure, we look at the case study of the Miller family in suburban Ohio. In 2026, Sarah and Michael Miller completed their mediated divorce. Unlike the historical trends of 1996 or even 2016, where the end of a marriage often meant the end of a cohesive family narrative, the Millers utilized the high-tech, high-empathy tools we have discussed to rewrite their future rather than erase their past. Step by step, the Millers navigated the final phase of their mediation, which in 2026 is known as the legacy integration phase. This is the moment where the financial spreadsheets and the biometric data points are set aside, and the focus shifts to the human element that no algorithm can fully replicate: the creation of a shared story. In the old adversarial model, the story was written by opposing attorneys in the form of accusations and cross-examinations. In the mediation model of 2026, the story is co-authored by the parents. Sarah and Michael sat with a specialized narrative mediator to draft their family transition statement. This document is not a legal requirement, but it has gained massive societal acceptance as a vital psychological tool. It outlines how they will describe the divorce to their children, how they will honor their 15 years of shared history, and how they will handle the emotional milestones of the future. Imagine the Miller family 3 years from now, in 2029. Because they chose mediation in 2026, their financial liquidity remains intact. The $100,000 that would have been consumed by a litigated trial was instead preserved in a dedicated educational trust for their 3 children. The potential outcomes of this financial preservation are measurable. Data from 2026 indicates that children of mediated divorces have a 30% higher rate of attending their first-choice college, largely because the family's capital was not liquidated to pay for legal warfare. But more importantly, imagine the psychological wealth of the Miller children. They did not grow up in the shadow of a 2-year courtroom battle. They did not see their parents as plaintiffs and defendants. They saw them as partners in a difficult but respectful transition. This brings us to the core of the 2026 revolution: the destigmatization of the good divorce. For decades, the U.S. public was conditioned to believe that a divorce was a failure. Mediation has reframed it as an evolution. This shift is supported by the 2026 Co-Parenting Success Index, a metric used by family researchers to track the health of post-divorce households. The index shows that families who use mediation report higher levels of life satisfaction 5 years post-divorce than those who remained in high-conflict marriages or those who litigated their split. This is the data meeting the soul. We now have the empirical evidence to prove that a peaceful exit leads to a more prosperous life for everyone involved. Furthermore, we must address the shared narrative as the ultimate safeguard against the trauma of the adversarial system. In 2026, mediation rooms are increasingly incorporating closing rituals. This might involve a final joint meeting where the couple acknowledges the pain of the ending, but also expresses gratitude for the growth they experienced together. While this may sound overly sentimental to the legal minds of the past, the historical trends of 2026 show that these rituals significantly reduce the likelihood of post-divorce litigation. When a relationship ends with a sense of closure rather than a sense of defeat, the human impulse for revenge is neutralized. This is the one thing that no AI can replace. An algorithm can suggest a 50-50 split of a 401k, but it cannot facilitate the moment of forgiveness that allows two people to walk out of a room and into a new life without the weight of bitterness. The societal acceptance of this model has also changed the American holiday landscape. In 2026, the divided holiday is being replaced by the collaborative celebration. Case studies show that mediated families are 40% more likely to spend significant milestones, like graduations, weddings, and even some holidays, in the same physical space. This is only possible because the mediation process protected the social capital of the family. By avoiding the scorched earth tactics of the courtroom, Sarah and Michael Miller ensured that their future grandchildren would not have to choose between two different Thanksgiving dinners. They preserved the continuity of the family tree, even as the branches grew in different directions. But what is the final verdict on the mediation revolution? As we look at the United States in the current year, we see a country that is slowly but surely healing from its addiction to professionalized conflict. The adversarial system is still there for the cases that truly need it, the cases of high danger or fundamental bad faith, but for the vast majority of the American public, mediation has become the primary path. The economic impact is staggering. Billions of dollars in family equity are being preserved every year. The mental health impact is even greater. We are raising a generation of children who are seeing conflict resolved through negotiation rather than combat. The step-by-step evolution of this movement has taught us that the law is not just a set of rules. It is a reflection of our values. In 2026, our values have shifted toward efficiency, privacy, and most importantly, the protection of the vulnerable. We have realized that the most American way to handle a dispute is not to fight until someone is destroyed, but to negotiate until everyone can move forward. This is the legacy of the 2026 mediation movement. It is a movement that honors the complexity of the human experience while utilizing the precision of modern technology. As we close this 10-part deep dive, we must acknowledge that while we have perfected the mechanics of the exit, the journey of the family is never truly over. The soul of the family lives on in the thousands of small decisions made every day after the mediation agreement is signed. It lives on in the respectful text message about a soccer practice, in the fair division of an unexpected expense, and in the quiet pride of seeing a child thrive despite the challenges of a changing household. The technology of 2026 has given us the tools to make these moments possible, but the humans involved must still choose to use them. The mediation revolution is not just a change in how we divorce, it is a change in how we live. It is an acknowledgement that in a world of increasing complexity and digital noise, the most valuable things we have are our relationships and our peace of mind. By choosing mediation, the American public is choosing to invest in their own resilience. This masterclass has shown you the potential outcomes of that choice. It has shown you the data, the case studies, and the high-tech frontier. But as we sign off, remember that the most important part of any mediation isn't the smart contract or the biometric feedback. It is the human being on the other side of the table. This concludes our deep dive masterclass on the societal acceptance of divorce mediation in the USA. But while this story ends here, a new one is beginning in the world of high-stakes resolution. What happens when these same mediation principles are applied to the multi-trillion-dollar world of international corporate disputes? Are we about to see the death of the corporate lawsuit? In our next series, we will peel back the curtain on the global settlement syndicate and how 2027 is shaping up to be the year that litigation finally becomes obsolete on a global scale. You won't want to miss the first look at the future of international justice.